Hello and good afternoon. My name is Martin Coward, and welcome to Noonday Meditation and Contemplative Prayer Power Hour. We've been gathering in this virtual or internet sanctuary for almost a year now, which we started back at the beginning of the pandemic as a place, as a refuge to love and support each other through this crisis. And what a crisis it's been. We have been through probably one of the most scary, frightening, painful uh, 12 months in the history of humankind almost. And I'm so grateful that we've created this space together so we can be here for each other, because that is the way through it. From my perspective, is that we need to, the sanctuary here is a safe place for us to let go of the drama. I mean, there's so much drama in the outside world, from racial violence, I mean, not racial tensions and inequalities and racism in our country, and how that's manifested and how painful that's been with young people shot and killed by police officers, and those demonstrations and how that was distorted. We've been through an attack on our country, on our capital, and we've had 500,000 people plus die of the pandemic. So we have been through one of the most difficult and the most challenging, and we got through it. And we are through it. It's not over yet. We're still in pain from this. We're still healing from it. I think we're going to be continuing to heal from it for quite a while. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep this here going. I may not be able to come every day like I've been in the past, because my business schedule is getting a little bit busier now that we're on the other side of this. So it might be limited to 3 days a week instead of for 5, but I'm going to be here at least a few days a week, because I need this as much as anybody. So thank you so much for being here. And again, if you're joining me, please put your comments in, say hello in the chat so I know you're here. Otherwise, I can't tell if you're here or not, because I just see a number up on the board and it doesn't tell me who you are. So I like to know who's here, and also ask you to comment. Make sure you put comments in the section, because I'm talking about things that sometimes you may not agree with. You're not here to agree with me. We're here to learn from each other. And I'm just sharing with you what's being shared with me, and the things that are helping me to get through this. And also, as a prosperity coach, what I do here is my intention is to always show us how we take a contemplative practice and put it into use in our lives. How do we take our contemplative practices to empower ourselves in order to be more productive, to have a more exciting and more fulfilling life in our careers, in our families, whatever. I'm particularly interested in money and prosperity, and living in a world of abundance, and that mindset shift. So I often talk about ways we can shift our mindset, and I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about our biases, and I've been reading and talking this week about the 13 biases that were put in an article that came out on Monday, and I thought it was such a good article. And I think we all have some way of understanding how these biases are impacting our lives, and they get in the way of our progress, of our future, of living a life of joy and prosperity. And that's what we all want, isn't it? Isn't that what we really want on this planet, to come here and be able to enjoy ourselves and take care of each other and live lives of joy and be happy? And so what I hope we can do today is I'm going to discuss the last 4 of those biases. And what are biases? Biases are just simply our beliefs, our opinions, and how we perceive the world based on our past experiences. And the way our brains work, the way our binary brains work, is we remember past experience. The ego is there to protect us. So the mind is always thinking back in the past of some painful experience. And it's like saying, okay, and that's where the bias comes from. It says, Money's bad. Until I got booze, I was scared to death of money because of my family history and my experience of money and the way it related to me. I did on a subconscious level, and I think many people do. I had a fear of money, and my coach told me, Martin, one time, she says, "You are terrorized by money. You don't just you're terrorized. So why would we want to have money flow freely, something called money flow more freely in our lives? We have a history of terror from it, and we're not able to see that because it's in shadow. And so what I do here, and the biases are coming out of our shadow belief systems. That usually comes down to one simple belief: something around I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. There's something. There's every time, every shadow belief, every shadow story, every is always grounded in some version of inadequacy. So it fears completeness, it fears wholeness, it fears the heart because it doesn't understand it. So our biases stand in our way of the truth, of our freedom. It's like having a wall around us that is got us blocked in, that we can't see out of to move forward because we're so blocked in by these belief systems that we are that have us chained in, if you will, blocked in. It's got to be. It's like a high wall of nonsense, really, of false beliefs that keep us trapped inside a very, very, very small world, and it's not a very fun way to live. So, and then with all of the drama that's been going on in the world, and that we watch on television, we watch the drama, and they validate these biases, these painful biases, and tell us that they're true. See what happens? You see what I told you about those Republicans? They don't care about us. All they care about is money and power. Well, that's not true. You don't know anything about what they care about, quite frankly. But when they behave the way they are behaving right now on the stimulus bill, we can easily get to a we versus them mindset. And that's dangerous because now we're not working together. We're not unity. It's in conflict with the truth, because actually we're all on the same page from the heart space. We're not on the same page from the ego's perspective. We never are. It doesn't even understand what that means. It's always got to be its own individual right entity. But from heart space, which is why we go into heart space with contemplation, with heart space, we're able to transcend those biases. We're able to, with courage, we're able to transcend those false narratives and the fear that comes with them into a higher level of consciousness we'll call the heart. We'll call it creative aware mind. And that's what we do in contemplation. We let go of all those biases, and we allow ourselves to have freedom to experience a life from a more honest, more true place. In the terms of poverty and scarcity, which our minds make up, the world is not enough, it's not enough for me, it's not enough for everybody else, whatever it is, not enough, not enough, not enough, that's not true. God did not make a universe of lack. He made a universe of abundance. So the truth is abundance. But until we feel our way into that abundance, we don't understand it and we can't perceive it. But because the bias is in the way. You see what I'm saying? So this is what we have to let go of that limiting belief, that bias, and so we can make space for a bigger truth, which is the world is abundant. And that opens up that whole creative, infinite intelligence within us. So then we can begin to make decisions, and we begin to walk through the day from a place of love and prosperity and the truth. And it's a more exciting, more fun way to work, and more exciting and more fun way to live. Isn't it? So let's go to the article, and I'm going to pull out those last four. We've covered I won't read them all to remind us. Maybe make a comment or two on them. But the idea today is to finish up these 13 biases and so we can let them go. And they're not going to go away, by the way, forever. I mean, mine come up every day. They come up all the time. That's why a contemplative practice is called a practice. We have to practice letting these biases go. And we have to practice in letting them go when they show up in our lives. So ask yourself, as I'm reading through these biases, think about your beliefs around that. Think about what are your biases that come up when I read through this list? How is that showing up in your life? How is it manifest? How is it serving you? How is it keeping you safe? And what would you be able to do if you didn't have that belief? Okay, that's what I want you to be thinking about as I'm teaching these spiritual principles on. Really, it's the law of abundance. It's the law of truth. It's the wisdom teachings of all the mystics. So here we go. Let's get started here. And this is an article that comes out every night from a fellow named Richard Rohr. And Richard Rohr is a Franciscan and a Roman Catholic priest. And he started something called the Center for Action and Contemplation out in New Mexico. And they do great work out there. And that's what this is all about to me. Is how do we put contemplation into action to create a better world for ourselves, for each other, and because we're creators. That's what we are. We're creators. We're not workers. We're creators. And when we create, we're adding value. And when we add value, we create wealth. Because we're coming out of abundance. You see the value of shifting that mindset from scarcity to abundance? When we come from a scarcity perspective, we create more scarcity in our lives. So think about that when we're talking. If we come from a place of without the bias, without coming from the truth and abundance, we create more abundance in our life. We create more of what we think about. So we want a mindset shift that takes us to abundance and prosperity. I think that's what we want. You want to live in scarcity and doubt. That's your choice, but I don't. I've been there. It's painful. So let's see what he had to say. And he came out on Monday. And we've covered 6 of them. We've covered 9 of them. And today we're going to cover the last 4. Okay? Let's get started. Recognizing our biases. So recognize yours as I read through this. CAC faculty member Brian McLaren has done thoughtful and helpful research about what makes us see things so differently from one another. He identified 13 biases that we outlined today. Being a former pastor and an excellent communicator, Brian found a way to make these complex ways of seeing simple and memorable. He writes, people can't see what they can't see. Their biases get in the way, surrounding them like a high wall, trapping them in ignorance, deception, and illusion. No amount of reasoning and argument will get through to them unless we first learn how to break down the walls of bias. Confirmation bias. This is the first one. We judge new ideas based on the ease with which they fit into and confirm the only standard we have. Old ideas, old information, and trusted authorities. As a result, our framing story, belief system, or paradigm excludes whatever doesn't fit in. Complexity bias. Our brains prefer a simple falsehood to a complex truth. Community bias. It's almost impossible to see what our community doesn't, can't, or won't see. About that. Think about the community you're in and how it is a collective sees the world. Competency bias. We don't know how much or little we know because we don't know how much or little others know. In other words, incompetent people assume that most other people are about as incompetent as they are. As a result, they underestimate their own incompetence and consider themselves at least of average competence. We have a bias that we're all mediocre, basically. And that's not true. The truth is when you tap into when you really tap into the truth of who you are, us human beings are pretty amazing creatures. I mean, it is amazing what we are when you realize what you are. There's nothing you can't do. But we're stuck in this whole beliefs of incompetency. Basically, we're just mediocre. We just barely get by because we've had a history of being afraid to really step into our power. The next one is consciousness bias. Some things simply can't be seen from where I am right now. But if I keep growing, maturing, and developing, someday I'll be able to see what is now inaccessible to me. I talk about this in what I call the ladder of selves of human consciousness. As we climb the ladder of selves, we transcend and include the lower dimensions of fear and of the egoic mind, and transcend up into the spiritual. When we're at those lower levels, we may know they're there, but we can't experience them. But when we transcend and include up to higher levels of consciousness, of wisdom and truth and love, we can certainly, we're aware that we have those lower levels because we brought them with us. You have to bring them with you. But when you're at those lower levels, when you're in the darkness, when you're in the dark night of the soul, you don't see anything that looks lovely. When you're stuck in those high walls of, I don't know, and the scarcity and the world's falling apart, you don't see a world of abundance because that's not where you are. You're in a world of scarcity and lack. So what we have to do is we have to come here, go somewhere, and do some contemplative prayer, do a little considering prayer, which we're going to do in a few minutes, to let go of that bias so you can move up into that higher level of consciousness, which is abundance in itself. And you'll experience the world and you'll see the world from a place of there's plenty for everybody. There's plenty of resources to go around. We've moved to a higher level of consciousness. And the world's doing that right now. There's a movement right now in the world. I just run a group of women that are mostly women. It's not all men, it's men too, but it's led largely by women. It's called the Unstoppable Entrepreneurs, and it's these amazing women who are onto something about moving this world out of a poverty mindset and into the truth of abundance and prosperity through this very lucrative and very positive way of looking at money and finances and really taking advantage of the golden parts of the capitalistic system. Consciousness bias. Then we've got comfort and complacency bias. I prefer not to have my comfort. I'd rather be miserable in my misery than I want to be bothered with anything. I have to change my mind, all that kind of work. I'm happy being in my pity party, frankly. You know. Conservative liberal biases. One person, I, toward this, lean toward nurturing fairness and kindness, or towards strictly enforcing purity, loyalty, liberty, and authority as an expression of my political identity. It's we Democrats versus those Republicans, or those Republicans versus us Democrats. That's a conservative and liberal biases. We can get stuck in that because we can't see any other way, that we create a world of the other. But we're all really, the truth is, we're all one. We're just at different levels of consciousness, really. Different ways of thinking. They're going to get there, by the way. You know, they're going to get there. All of us are going to get there. Democrats and Republicans. It's not a we versus them, but we think that way if we're in one of those camps. And then confidence bias. I'm attracted to confidence even if it's false. I prefer the bold lie to the hesitant truth. Yeah. If you were a Trump supporter and he came out and said, he comes out and tells you and creates the lie that the election was stolen from him, you want to believe that simple falsehood because it aligns with your belief system. And you don't want to deal with the truth. You don't want to take the time to really find out, is that true? Because it's too complicated. We all do it, by the way. It's not something that we all do it. If something doesn't agree with us, we're looking for some type of bias. So, and if someone can confidently get up and tell you that's a con artist for you. That's what a con artist can do. They can confidently, they can with so much confidence convey a falsehood, we believe it because it aligns with who we are. So we find ourselves trapped in a world that's not real, a whole different universe of people who believe that this election was stolen. It's just not true. But there's a whole bunch of people right now in this country who believe it is true, who believe that Biden stole the election, and that's what they believe. But they're stuck in that until they quit believing it. And it's just easy for them to believe that because they can't accept the truth. Truth is, he did win. He won fairly. He won the fairest elections ever. But they can't deal with that. They'd rather hear people, authority figures, talk in confidence and continue to perpetuate this lie. That's why it's dangerous. Why people in authority, when they are able to perpetuate lies and myths and falsehoods for their own benefit, can do a lot of damage. And look what we had, and people, a bunch of thugs trying to take over the Capitol and kill people based on a confident sounding liar. That's the truth. Okay, let's get to the last four today. Catastrophe or normalcy bias. I remember dramatic catastrophe, but don't notice gradual decline, or improvement. True. I mean, that is so relevant right now. We've all can be attached to the catastrophe of the pandemic. We can all attribute to what's happened, the pain, the scares. It's real. We're still in it. But then we can say, is it then the question is, what did we really learn from it? Is it true that the pandemic in itself is all that bad? It's just what it is. It's not good or bad. What it is a way for what it done is done for us is to challenge ourselves. And I think the way it's challenged us, it's challenged in ourselves in a way of looking at which do we put first in our lives. We put money first or people first. That seems to be the biggest debate, right? Still the debate. Which is more important, people or money in this catastrophe? So they're saying, well, we want to get back to some form of normalcy. We do. We want to get out. We can talk to each other. We can hug each other. Basically, just be in contact. Go to a restaurant, not wear a mask. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But I don't think anybody wants to go back to a normalcy of the old toxic system, where we live in scarcity and not enough. We are moving away from an old way to a new way. But we got to take down these biases first. And it's so easy in the middle of this catastrophe to blame our problems on the catastrophe. But if we just, because it is a catastrophe, we're going through a catastrophe. And they just had a catastrophe in Texas with the flood, with the water. There's still more places in Mississippi and they don't have water. And you got a catastrophe. Now, what did the catastrophe do? It woke people up to how incompetent those systems are down there for electricity and for water. It's amazing to me that the state of Texas, which is the energy state of the world, completely failed during a major freeze. A normal human event. That's a normal event. It's a normal, regular weather event. And yet, the state of Texas, which is the #1 energy state in the world, practically, failed to deliver. It's a mess. So then we look at, well, what happened? That's catastrophe bias. We want to blame other people. We want to blame the world. We want to blame whatever's happening. Catastrophe bias. That's interesting. Contact bias. When I don't have intense and sustained personal contact with the other, my prejudices and false assumptions go on. Now that is huge. That is huge today. I mean, we're dealing with racism. I mean, I grew up in the Deep South, and I'll tell you that they're missing out. White folks are missing out by not having, by not having true contact with the other, particularly straight white men. They are living a very, their world is so minute because all they see is the only people that are really worthy of straight white men like themselves. But the world is far more exciting than that. You know, when you get out of that bias that that the other is bad or wrong, whether they're gay. I mean, as a gay person, there's people who have a bias toward me and people who are like me because they don't understand me. But typically speaking, like when we have allies, is the more and more times that you get to know the other, when you get to know what Muslims are like. I mean, I've got some wonderful friends that are Muslims, and they're not anything like what they're often put out to be. They're wonderful, loving people, just like you and I are. But because we don't know them yet, we haven't had enough contact with them, enough interaction with them, we put up a wall and won't let them in because we're afraid of them. We're afraid of their difference. Think about yourself. Who is it you don't know? You know, a lot of gay people do the same thing because they were bullied by straight people. They're straight boys. They don't want straight people. They're afraid of them. You know? And it's just because they haven't had enough contact. I mean, I've got some wonderful, I've got dear friends, men friends that I love. They're totally straight. I mean, there's not a gay thing about them. But we love each other deeply because they know me and I know them. And my life is so much richer. Their life is so much richer because we have each other. And so look, we've taken the time to get to know each other and find out what makes us tick, what makes us come alive, what we care about, what we value. And we found we have a lot more in common than we have different. A lot more in common. So what biases might you have that's from people you don't know and understand? And what could you do differently? Where could you go? How could you get to know them? I remember a few years ago, I've been an Episcopalian most of my life, and I was decided the rector of my church left, and it was a small little church, and I wasn't really, without her there, it wasn't really, in her family, it wasn't really all that exciting for me. You know, I didn't really have a reason for being there. We only had like 12 people in the church, a little cute little community church around the corner from me, but I wanted to be something more involved. So, and being always on my life being an Episcopalian, I decided to take a year and go travel around to other denominations. I went with friends to some largely African American Baptist churches. I had a ball. I went to a UE church, Universal. What is I can't think of it now. The Universal whatever church they are. I went there for that was cool. But they call UUE or UU, something like that. I can't. That's frustrating. I can't remember what the name of that new church, that denomination is. But I went up. Well, the point I'm trying to make is that I wanted to understand how other denominations were showing up in the world. And so I did that a few years ago, and I ended up coming back to a wonderful Episcopal church over in Montclair that I'm very happy with. And the thing I like about that church is the diversity. It's a Christ-centered church, which is important to me as a Christian contemplative, that we have Christ we have the Eucharist there. And what was really important is that we've got every kind of person in the world. That's what gives us its power. We've got straight people, mixed race people. We've got women. We've got everything. We've got transgender people. It is such a wonderful, rich fabric of the world. And it's a community that's given me an opportunity to get to know people I didn't otherwise get to know. So my whole world is expanding. I'm no longer in this looking for fellow Episcopalians who look and think just like I do. I get to see the world from a much bigger lens. You know? Much more exciting way to live. Cash bias. It's hard for me to see something when my way of making a living requires me not to see it. That is the paramount. That is the underlying truth. When you're when trying to get someone to understand abundance who is stuck in a low-paying job, well, this whole idea of the minimum wage is absurd. Everybody ought to get $15 an hour. No one should be working under the poverty line. And there's plenty of money. It's good for the economy. And the only reason why they're not doing it is because they're in their own bias. So, but when you're in, so for me as a prosperity coach, to try to explain to someone who is, although I've helped people make breakthroughs, big breakthroughs in their thinking about money, so that they're now making money. They're no longer unloading trucks at night. They're actually working, doing what they love and making a lot of money at it. That's a breakthrough. But they had to let go of that belief system that they didn't, that all there was unloading trucks and making the minimum wage. That's all they could see until I helped them see something different. Okay. And that's powerful. And that's the power of abundance. Once this fellow was able to see and feel into the abundance in his gifts, he's a very talented musician. And once he was able to tap into these gifts of being a very talented musician, people pay him a lot of money to work in that recording studio because he's good. And they want people who have the creative talent to be able to create good audio. So he's now making a lot more money. He made more money in one afternoon in a recording. He made half his salary one afternoon in a recording studio. He texted me a little text. He said, "Martin, I love you." I thought, "Oh, wow, that's nice. Well, I love you too. What's it going on about?" He said, "Well, I just made $25,000 for a few hours of work in the recording studio. Thank you for helping me see this." That's my favorite story of transformation, by the way, because what he was saying, he could not see the possibility until he could see it, until he could feel it actually. And he kind of felt his way towards it. And I said, "You need to go out, when we discovered that, you need to go out and do something about music. That's your calling, man." He broke through that cash bias from that old job. Now, the last one is conspiracy bias, and that's a hot topic right now as we've been living through conspiracy theories, like right and left. Every time you turn on television, it's another conspiracy theory. But let's see what that says, okay? Under stress or shame, our brains are attached to stories that relieve us, exonerate us, or portray us as innocent victims of malicious conspirators. You see how powerful those conspiracy theories are, what the damage they can do, because particularly if it comes from a competent person in a position of power, like the ex-president of the United States. When the president of the United States is out lying and creating conspiracy theories that align with other people's conspiracy theories, we create a very dangerous situation. We're still living in that dangerous situation right now. We still got barbed wire and all kinds of stuff around our Capitol because people believe these conspiracy theories. They believe that the president, the current president, stole the election. They got all these conspiracy ideas. They're just stories they made up. But they made them up for their own purpose. I mean, Trump made these up for his purpose because he wanted to stay in power. And if he could get enough people to believe this nonsense, they believed it, and they did, and they stormed the Capitol. So do you see how these biases really do create havoc in our world? They just flame the fire. They just fuel the fire of the drama. And they're dangerous. They're dangerous. And they're dangerous in our own lives. So think about where in your life that you're stuck behind some false belief, some false story about something that you'd like to let go of. I like to say, who would you be without your story? Who would you be without your bias? So we're going to meditate right now, and I'm going to take you through that. And the intention today is to let go of any biases. We do it every day, by the way. That's the whole point of the kind of prayer we do. It's called centering prayer. And as soon as I get my timer going here, we're going to have a 20-minute meditation with 4 interval bells. Let's get started. So raise your hands up in the air. Now raise the hand up in the air, sit up in your chair, wiggle your toes, feel that life force energy in your body. Feel what it feels like to be alive inside you. That creative energy force that's just, it's been manifested, it's been created and formed into, it's poured itself into infinite creative powers of the universe have poured themselves into a little bitty baby. Out of all of that infinite creative energy. Let's go get into that. That's what we are. We are formed out of infinite creative energy. We become formed into a finite body. It's pretty exciting. So I'm going to show you a little technique that you can do for breathing. Breathing is the breath work is the way inside our breath. That's the way we travel in to create space. It's like if you want to create more space in a balloon, you blow it up, right? So when you blow up a balloon with a little bit of space, it's now a lot of space. And that's what we want. We want spaciousness. When Jesus was saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand, he looked up and he could see spaciousness. He was not talking about a place we go when we die, by the way. He was looking up and he could see spaciousness. He saw spacious energy, uncreated, yet to be created energy of love. That's the kingdom of heaven. So one thing that I've learned a long time ago that's really helpful for me is that the way our brains work. When we think, the back of our tongue vibrates slightly. So we can become conscious of relaxing the back of our tongue so it's not vibrating. That helps. And the way to do that is to take the tip of your tongue and rest it on the roof of your mouth just behind your front teeth and slightly part your lips and relax your jaw and relax your tongue. I'll show you. So just try it. Put your tip of your tongue behind on the roof of your mouth behind your teeth. Part your lips slightly and just relax. And breathe. Can you feel the breath just slowly massaging the back of your tongue? Allow your mind to just follow and become aware of the natural breathing. The in-breath, rise and the fall of the rib cage, and the exhale. And just notice it. Just fall into being. And we're going to do 3 big, deep breaths into our big belly breaths to expand it, to fill up that balloon, to fill up our interior with more space, with more air, with more space for creativity. So, with your belly muscles, pull the breath into your nose and then down your throat and deep into your belly. Hold it for a second. Taking a little bit more, and now just ease. And as the breath leaves you, let go of everything else. Let go of all your biases. all your beliefs, all your opinions, all your judgments. Just let them float away. Come back to the natural breathing. Allow the mind to become conscious of your breathing. Become conscious of that openness in your belly. Maybe find that anchor in there, that anchor deep within you. Use the breath as a way to anchor yourself deep within yourself. Bring you out of the external and into the internal. That everything is happening. Now we're going to take one more. We're going to take two more. We're going to take another big, deep belly breath. So just with your belly muscles, pull the breath into your nose, down your throat, open your heart, and deep into your belly. And just release it. And as you let go of every thought, every opinion, every judgment, good or bad, right or wrong you've ever had about anything or anyone, me, yourself. Hold on to nothing. Empty yourself out completely. All that information, all that nonsense. Just notice the thinking. It's not about the mind. And the mind's going to always thinking. The mind does, it thinks. But as you become aware of its thinking, just ask it to just take a breath. There you go. Rest and just be. Now we're going to take one more last deep belly breath. And with the bell, let it go. And use the vibration of the bell to fall more deeply within. There's that final bell. Welcome back. Please add any comments you might have into the chat. If you're watching the replay, I hope you're getting something from it. I hope you're learning to meditate. I hope you're looking at where your biases are. My encouragement is to just put your comments in the comment section. I'll come back and comment later. Or if you want to explore this a little deeper, you can always send me a direct message and we can take it offline. This would be my absolute pleasure to help you look at some of these biases that are getting in your way of having connection. That's what they do. The biases get in our way of connecting with other people. And maybe you're carrying a bias with a team member. You want to connect with a team member, but you're carrying an old story that the team member is not good. They're sorry. They're not good workers, whatever the story is. And the thing is, they may have been that way in the past, but well, what's making them that way? And so you want to have a better connection with that person. Maybe it's somebody you were out there on your list of people that you wanted to work with a few years ago and it didn't go well at the time. So you're still carrying around a story that they don't want to work with you. Well, you've changed, they've changed. I'm doing this right now as I'm going back and looking through my old client list because I've changed a lot. I'm in a whole different business. But I find myself looking at their name and thinking of a story where they didn't want to work with me in the past. So I'm saying, well, they don't work. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm the one carrying. They may not. They may have completely forgotten that story. But I'm carrying the story about them. So I'll tell you what I'm doing in that case, I'm going out and if I send out an email or a text or something to reconnect with them, I am consciously letting go of my projection and praying and saying, I hope if they're carrying a projection on me, that let it go and realize that I'm reaching out from a place of love. And I want to work with them. I think I can help them. And it changes the whole way I feel about sending out the communication. We let go of our biases so we can connect with others. That's what we really long for, is we long for that deep connection. That's our journey. I hope this was helpful today. And again, put your comments in, send your address. I've got a new Facebook group for gay, trans, and bisexual men, particularly entrepreneurs who want to build and grow their businesses with community and not with competition. If that's you, please join us. I'd love to have you. It's called Financial Heart Space for Gay, Bi, Trans Men. Very simple. Love to have you be a part of it. That's you. And so may love and prosperity prevail.